good to see Frank Pommering. Not seen you for a while. So the agenda today is just really to have an office hours call, which don't have any updates for you guys today, other than to look at the stuff we're going to demo, a couple of informal demos and a new blog post about serverless functions with Java in OpenFaaS. Have we got any Java developers on tonight? I see Richie is there. Richie, help me with this a little bit with Vivek. All right. Well, if people arrive later, we'll just have to catch up with them afterwards. I'm going to get the participants list up, and we'll just go around everyone, see what you're working on, if you need something. Also show you real quick the Trello board. There it is. So let's go around who we've got on the call. I've got Martin at the top from VMware. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you've been doing, what you're planning on doing next?
Hello guys. Do you hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
Okay. I've been recently testing things, and I've been working on moving fastnetis D to fastnetis, dimensions on fastnetis, and now I'm going to work on exit codes when the deployment fast UI, when someone fails to deploy a function, to exit with code 1, because now it exits with 0 code, and that's my plans for.
That sounds good. Anyone got any questions about that?
Well, for now, not. I haven't really started that yet.
Okay. One of the things that that was done by Martin was a change to CLI.
That's what the end user monitoring is.
And
okay, so these are all the
changes to Derek, and Derek is using right now for tracking our issues and allowing people to help administrate the project. One of the things that was done as a request that came from a Derek user was to create milestones, or at least manage the milestones through Derek. So you can see I've actually had a go with this, and the idea is that when we plan a release of something like the CLI, this is one I did as an example, you can assign issues into it by typing in Derek set milestone. Here's an example. And what that does is it groups them all together. It shows us what percent we're through on the milestones. I think it's something we should look at doing. We have a bit more structure around some of the work, the deadlines, and the releases as they're coming up. So thanks for that, Martin.
You're welcome.
Now I don't see Vivek. I was going to ask him how things are going. Do we have Richie? Rich Pal?
Hey, Alexei. Hey, Alex.
Hey.
Hey, sorry, I was on mute.
It's all right. It's good to have you here. Relatively new. I believe you're a colleague of Vivek.
Okay, let me call him. Sure.
Sure. So
yeah.
you work with Vivek. I think that's how we.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a bit about what you've been up to recently?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Bispal, and I'm basically in Java development. And recently, I started contributing in OpenFaaS Java template, and working with the Vivek and Alexei for new Java templates to release Java templates on OpenFaaS framework. So yeah.
Yeah, so the Java template, there's a blog post for this. You've maybe seen it on Twitter. I'm going to walk through it in a little bit. And Rich Powell helped me with this, as did Vivek. So if you're a Java developer, check it out. If you know some Java developers, send it over to them. Thank you very much for your first contributions. Let's go over to Jonas. Jonas just helped lead a workshop at OzCon, and I think about 60 people joined Slack all at once, something like that.
Awesome. Yeah, we it was Eric Stokel and me running the workshop. Eric did a great presentation, kind of introducing the project to 60 people in the room. It was pretty much completely full room. I think we had like 4 seats left, so we might need a bigger room for our next workshop. It was a lot of fun. Eric started off with a presentation and introduction to OpenFaaS for about 10 minutes. And then we dove into the workshop itself. And since the workshop is self-paced, everyone just started. And then we started having issues with the Wi-Fi. OzCon's conference Wi-Fi is apparently not the strongest in the land here. And of course, there were like 5-6 other workshops going on at the same time. So pretty much everyone had the same issue. However, we were successful in mitigating that, but it took us about an hour to get started, really. But then we had a lot of people almost complete all of it.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really fun. Most of I did a kind of a check midway through, and most people were at lab 4 about midway through, and then people left when they came to lab 6 and 7 and wanted to continue some other time. So it was really fun. We had a lot of great discussions with the attendees. We had people from companies that wanted to try this out. So it was a lot of really interesting discussions. And of course, we got some great questions on what is serverless and how does it work and why is it different? And what makes it different from a regular application? And it was a lot of fun. So yeah, it was very well attended. Definitely an interesting topic. So I think we can definitely do this at more open source focused shows around the globe.
That's great. I know you're going to run like a private event at VMware to help promote diversity soon.
Yeah, in a week and a half.
Did this help? And do you think it would be useful to have something easy to bring up OpenFaaS on the cloud for people for some of this stuff, or was it good?
No. So I think the main issue that we had was of course with the Wi-Fi, and just doing a deploy stack, if you haven't pulled down the images first, takes a while. If you have 60 people downloading OpenFaaS at the same time, takes a while. So we actually had a few people time out on that, so it just took them forever to get started, essentially. So if we were doing this in a cloud environment, we wouldn't have that issue. But they also wouldn't walk away with OpenFaaS installed on their laptops. So I think it's great to have it locally, because then they can just continue off wherever they were, because it's all on their own laptop, which I like. If we were to run it in the cloud, we might have less issues, but then they would have nothing tangible to take home with them, except for the workshop documents, of course. So I think it's good to have it locally. But I did add in a PR yesterday afternoon. If you're going to an instructor-led workshop, make sure you pull down all the files in the Docker Compose file for the deploy stack script, because otherwise it's just going to hog the network for the first like half hour and nothing's going to go through. So that's my only suggestion, essentially. Other than that, I really like having it locally, and of course, because not everyone was fluent in Docker, so to speak. A lot of people said, "Oh, well, I'm running a Python 3 application here, but I only have Python 2.7 installed on my machine. How's that going to work?" So we had some discussions around what containers are and how that works as well. But most of the attendees did really well, and we got some fabulous tweets saying this was one of the best workshops they've ever been to, and especially a big shout out to everyone that has been creating the workshop documents, because they are so easy to follow along with. So really, really great job on doing that, everyone.
Well, I see Ivana,
Jonas,
you're moving there.
I have a quick question, Jonas. What was the time slot for that workshop? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we had time between 1:30 and 5, so it was 3.5 hours. But you can essentially cut out an hour of that of just Wi-Fi being miserable. So let's say we maybe had 2.5 hours. So I think if you have a 3-hour time slot, you can walk through quite a lot of the workshop, and people will walk away really happy with knowing more about serverless, having an OpenFaaS setup, and have created a few functions and really got it started.
That's great. Thank you so much for doing that, Jonas.
It was lovely. I'm looking forward to the weekend after this.
Yeah.
When I'm doing the next one, so it's going to be fun.
Awesome. So speaking of people that have worked on this, I know there's a bunch of people on the call that have helped out and have tested the workshop. Thank you for that. And I know Ivana is one of the people that's done quite a bit on that too. So Ivana, how are things going? What are you working on? What are you doing next? What are you going to show us today?
Hi all. I've been working on several things since the last meeting. I moved our core builds to OpenFaaS namespace and added support for Quay registry, not only for Docker Hub. I did some fixes to the templates. They were not setting the user group properly. I documented some PO examples for the build options feature. I've been working on support issues and tried out what Alex wrote for scaling. I tested scaling from 0 after invocation. I tried also the idler that he wrote, didn't run it to the end. I still have some issues with configuring it. I just tested successfully and looked around the scaling pull request. And currently I'm looking at changing the image tag not to stick to latest, but to generate unique. This is an issue that Stefan raised, I think. So I've been looking at it, and this is the next thing I'm going to start working on.
Okay. So if you guys missed the build options demo, or it was a bit quick last time we met, then if you look in the docs and type in build options, this will come up. And the idea here is that you may have something like Python function and you don't want to make your own template. Actually, maybe you need a native module like NumPy or Pandas, something that just won't build without make and GCC in the image. Well, we don't have them in the image by default. We've given you an option of adding them in for the build. So in your YAML file for your function, if you put build options dev, you'll now get those packages added, and they will allow you to build whatever's not working out for you. That should be everything that you need. The same works for Ruby as well. So in Ruby, there's a lot of modules that need C++ to build. So if you have a gem there and it's not building, this is the best way to add it. So please have a look at it and play with it. It's been released for a couple of weeks now. Great. See John McCabe.
Hi. Yeah, I've been sort of dipping in recently to sort of update the main web page to add the ability to blog, because at the minute we've got the majority of the OpenFaaS blog posts are going on Alex's personal blog, and sort of people are blogging on all over the place. So we wanted a way of kind of consolidating that. So yeah, Alex is able to bring that up there. So basically, it's built around Jekyll, so that we can just take advantage of GitHub pages. So we won't actually have any build jobs or anything to deal with. It's just a matter of making sure that the PRs look okay, merging them, and then the site will be updated. So
yeah,
so I'm working on fixing a few styling issues on mobile. So hopefully get that sorted out this evening.
Yeah, I really like this, and I know there's been some blog posts that people have done in the community where you put it on your personal blog, or you've not really felt like you had somewhere to put it. And I think this is really going to help with just the content that we're producing, giving people a place to put something. And the way this will work is you'll do a pull request. Someone will check the wording and what have you, and then we'll merge it, and it will just appear.
Can you actually jump to the blog post? Scroll down to the bottom. So you can submit your own post, and you will still get sort of credit for doing so. So if you go to the bottom, you'll get your GitHub and your Twitter and everything sort of linked.
Do you just have to fill that in as an extra?
No, there's an authors file. So you just add yourself as an author, and then it's like the name of the file. So alex.md or john.md or ivana.md, and then anything tagged with that name gets gets the details added there.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question?
So we'll see more with that, I guess, in the next few days. Is that Ed saying something?
Oh yeah, Alex, is it okay to ask a quick question about that?
Go for it.
Yeah, so is it reblogging? So these articles may have already been out there in sort of the original form, and we're just reposting them in a central place?
No, this is original content.
Okay. So I know that there's a nice tag that you can put in reblogging so that you don't get penalized by search engines.
Okay, that would be good to share, just because I know a few people.
I do that on a Medium blog where I cross, if you cross post from another blog. Otherwise, you get punished in the search engine rankings for sort of duplicating content.
Yeah.
Can you add that to the PR? Just a note of that.
Yeah, I'll share that. It's just a meta tag, I think, in the
cool. Have you got access to this document through the Slack channel? It's in hashtag OpenFaaS if you don't see this. All right, Ed, let's hear from you while you're in the hot seat.
Sure. Yeah, I was just finishing off a simple PR for displaying the version information in the CLI from the gateway and the provider. So Alex merged that this afternoon. The next thing I was working on is adding annotation support to the Kubernetes implementation. And I sort of understand what needs to happen, but I wasn't quite sure the motivation for this feature, like why it was actually needed.
That is detailed quite heavily in the original issue.
Okay.
I'll see if I can update to your version of the CLI here and show people the new feature.
Okay.
So annotations support any character. Okay, that's interesting. It's actually worked already. So normally when you do the installation, you just see the CLI version. And here we're actually already seeing the results of your work.
Yeah.
And it seems to be on the commit that I'm on. Expecting that to be a SHA or dev or something, but it's giving me the name.
Yeah, so you get the SHA above it, but I thought it was handy to show the text of the last commit as well, just for visual confirmation that you knew what the last commit was.
Okay.
But it does give you the commit SHAs as well.
We've not done that elsewhere, but we could always revisit that. So here we're seeing the gateway URL that you're using right now, the version. This shouldn't say dev because this is being produced by the build server. that looks wrong, but I'm sure we can figure it out. And then what we've got, or is it? No, this is my gateway, and I'm running a dev gateway, so that is correct. You've got meter rights there, and then the provider is actually built by the build server, and that's Swarm 035. This is looking good. If you want to try it, upgrade your CLI, fast CLI version, and I'm hoping this is going to help us with bug reports and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I also added a gateway flag, so I think you can point it to different versions.
That's my Nook with Kubernetes.
So I think that's a new flag.
Yeah, that works great. Good job on that. I like that. The annotations allow any key value, or at least any value. Labels do not, and we need to use descriptive labels for orchestrating functions and for administrating them with some of the helper tools that go with OpenFaaS. So you can only have A to Z and a dot, maybe a dash in your value, so you couldn't have a date timestamp, for instance.
Is there any specific tool that doesn't work at the moment that will work when this is rolled out that I could?
Yeah, and that is detailed in the issue as well.
Oh, was it? Oh, my apologies. I'll reread that then.
I can see if I can relink to it.
So the other thing that I was doing was trying out OpenFaaS on Kubernetes for the first time. I'm not that familiar with Kubernetes, so I followed the guide that was on the documentation website. I guess my feedback was it was quite general. It didn't steer you to, if you're a beginner, to say this is the guide for Minikube. It left it a bit unclear. So you had to read between the lines on some things, especially the namespace issue. I'm not sure if that's new, but because a lot of other blog articles about OpenFaaS with Kubernetes don't show examples using the namespace.
Would you be able to send some links through to that later on?
Yeah, I can do that.
I'm just going to check to see if there's any mention of Minikube here. So what have we got? That's for setting up Minikube. Here we go. We've got a special guide for Minikube. Is this the one that you followed?
Oh, no, I guess I just looked at the documentation that's on the main website.
Which, can you send the link later and I'll just double check? This is the main deployment guide for Kubernetes in the docs.
Yeah, that's the one I went through. I just sort of went through that step by step.
Yeah, maybe you missed this step here. So we could make that bigger.
Or maybe include that content, do you think, rather than having a separate blog article? I just think it's better to have all the documentation in one place.
Let's raise an issue to talk about it.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed is that if you go to the openfaas.com website, there's no prominent link to the documentation, which I thought perhaps we can improve by adding that.
Yeah. So that Git repo is www. This Git repo is docs.
Yeah.
So feel free to submit a PR on it.
So I think if people are jumping in, and they probably then would like a link to the docs prominently.
Yeah.
I actually couldn't find it.
There it is.
Yeah, it's sort of buried at the bottom.
Yeah.
I'll add it to the menu bar.
Yeah, that would be good in the menu bar. This could be a button or something as well in the text, but it is there. These are the sort of the final links. Good feedback. Please raise some issues. So there's www is a website. Docs is the docs repo. That'd be great.
Yeah, it was quite a good experience though, updating the documentation website locally. How all that worked, I had to go with that. That worked really well.
Great, thank you for that. Let us know if you get blocked on anything with the annotations, and try to find someone to help. Let's quickly go around some of the other people we've got. We'll try and keep it brief because there's a few things we want to show you. I've got Sean.
Yeah, hey there. I'm a bit of a fly on the wall, just trying to ramp up on kind of the architecture and components. I've been looking at the node templates, TypeScript, a lot of the work that Burton and Ken have been working on. and the UI. So yeah, really still learning a lot.
Shawnee, do you have any particular company or project?
Yeah, so I'm at PayPal on the Node core team. So we do the frameworks and infrastructure for all of our product teams. And yeah, we have serverless on the roadmap. So we're trying to figure out what to integrate. And yeah, OpenFaaS has been the first choice so far to really dive into. And yeah, as we look at it, I'd love to, contribute as I'm learning about it. So this is great.
It'd really be good to get your input as you are doing a lot of work with Node as to, are things where you expect them, are there things we could add, things we can tweak?
Absolutely.
Good that you're looking at these two things here. And there might be stuff in the architecture that you think would help somebody new. So feel free to make some suggestions after the call, and we can look and see if there's any more documentation or diagrams we can put together.
Awesome.
Great. Okay, so we've got about 13 people now. I think we've been through most. Richard? Richard?
Sorry, I had to get the window back up.
Right.
Yeah, I've been working on some automation with Ansible. I'd originally created some that would deploy a single node swarm cluster and deploy OpenFaaS on top of it. So I've been reworking that with the basic auth that's now part of the product by default. Sorry, project by default. But also building on the automation so that I can deploy a single node Kubernetes cluster as well now. It takes a little bit longer to run, but it works. It's functional.
That's one of the things I want to try to see today. Oh, great. Not on that environment. So, Jock?
How's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah. So right now this week, I am working on finishing up some content I have an intro to Kubernetes course for a small workshop. I have 2 of these at Google next week. And one of the apps I'm going to have in that workshop that we're going to be deploying will be the OpenFaaS platform. So that way you give a little exposure to OpenFaaS at Google Next. I think that would be good. I don't know if anyone else is doing anything there. If they are, let me know. I'd like to meet up with you. But yeah, I'll be doing that. So it's I'm trying to firm up the rest of that content this week and get that ready for the conference next week. It'll be Tuesday and Wednesday. I have one workshop Tuesday morning and one workshop Wednesday morning Pacific time.
That'd be really great. Thanks for doing that.
Yep.
Let us know how you find the conference.
Sure. Yeah, sure will.
So we have Dimitar from VMware. Is there anything you want to say? You got anything? Okay. Vivek, thanks for joining. I know it's quite late in India.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you great.
Yeah. So yeah, right now I am working on adding welcome messages to templates. So it will give hint to users on how to manage dependencies and how to build, like for Java, if they want to build with the Gradle, how they will build it. And currently I have to update those messages to templates. So I'm working on that. And I was helping with Java templates. So I was helping Richpal. Basically, he is very new to OpenFaaS. So I was helping him to get up to the speed so that he can improve the Java templates.
So in effect, I think we're going to see some pull requests that add these sort of welcome messages to each template, right? Is this the correct syntax?
Yeah.
for a single line?
Yeah, it should be welcome masses as we have edited the name.
Like this?
So yeah, welcome masses. Aim should be, it should be like camel case. So
oh, okay.
Is it?
Like that?
Yeah.
So now if I do FaaS CLI, there we go. So this is something I asked someone to work on. Vivek picked it up, turned it around in less than 12 hours, I think. And basically, some of the templates do need a little bit of, you do need a bit of help to get started with them. And this allows us to put a multi-line text message in. So after you generate your template, it can tell you exactly where to go. For the Java one, if we look in here, it's actually quite a deep file system because that's how Java developers like to work. So we could actually print out a message and say, you know, this is the file that you need to edit. So if we imagine that we actually put this into GitHub, edit your handler file over at, we put the full path. Now when you generate a new function, it's just giving you some smart information to help you get going. With Ruby, it might say you can use gems to install extra dependencies. With something like C#, it might say just edit your project file.
Does the YAML handling sort of deal with the block scalar styles, like the greater than and the bar for splitting multi-line content?
I don't know.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
I think if you can put literal block, so after welcome, like if you put a pipe and then put your messages in multi-line, that will get handled. If I'm not wrong, yeah. And then put new lines or any character after that. Yeah.
Is that enough?
And your first line can also come after.
Like this?
Yeah. Yeah. You can even indent these lines and so indent it by, yeah.
There we go. Yeah, you can.
So, if you put indentation in other lines, it will print those indentation as well. So like second line indented more than the first line.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Looks good. So thank you very much for doing that. We're now going to get some like helpful messages into the templates repo. Everything's split out quite logically in the OpenFaaS project. So there's different places for different things. I see Ramon, you've joined. Do you want to say anything? No? Bart, have you got any updates for us?
I don't have any updates because I didn't have any time. And I think for the next 4 weeks it will be hard. But if you need something from me more light, or I can help with the weekends, definitely I heard that there was someone has some issues with front end. I definitely can pick it up and help with CSS, etc. And if there is something which can be done in one day on a weekend, I can pick it up. But my current company is like forcing me to do a lot of stuff right now before I leave.
Sorry to hear that. Well, I hope wherever you're going, you're going to enjoy that. So, do we have anybody who hasn't spoken wants to say anything?
I have not yet had my chance.
There you go.
Made it to the second page.
Last but not least.
So I've been working on adding a new template for TypeScript to the repo. And part of that is any of the new templates, we're using the new OF watchdog, which is the HTTP handler. So moving towards that, been working with Ken and a little Sean on that, which has been great. Also, speaking of those two, working on a UI task force, sort of little mini team to sort of tackle updating the UI. Bart, you mentioned you could do UI stuff, I'll invite you to that channel and get your opinion anyway.
Definitely.
There's an open issue on GitHub for it, moving it to either Vue.js or React. A lot of discussion around it, which is really great.
No worries, I can definitely help with that.
Awesome, thank you.
Awesome.
And then back to the OF Watchdog stuff, there's also an issue out there about how we should handle migrating to the new Watchdog.
Yeah.
Without destroying the current sort of workflow. There's an issue out there with a lot of really good discussion, so I'd appreciate some more input on there, see what everybody thinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you paste a couple of links into this document for the things that you've mentioned?
Sure.
You've mentioned DigitalOcean. You've got a project. You can share it here. Rich Powell, you could share the Java template. There might be some other stuff we can share here, like John, your link for the blog. So I see we have one more person sort of crept in towards the end there. Peter? Is it Peter from Cisco?
Hi there. Yeah, Alex, since you invited me, I thought I'd just be a fly on the wall and listen in.
Great. Good to see you here.
Thank you so much.
So we've got a little bit of time left over now, just to have a few quick demos. First one probably makes sense to look at what Richard's doing. Richard, would you be able to show us your OpenFaaS on DigitalOcean?
Yeah, certainly. Before I start, I've just been testing it, and the DigitalOcean API is playing up a little bit, so it might be limited mileage in this, but we'll give it a go. Right, can anybody steer me on how to share desktop 2 rather than desktop 1?
I don't know. I normally just click share desktop and put everything there.
Right.
While we're waiting for that, it seems like we quite comfortably can fit in some updates and a very short demo within an hour. I was talking to a couple of people about occasionally having a 90-minute meeting instead of 60 minutes. Does anyone be interested in doing that so we can get a bit more time to look into things?
I don't know that I would be able to make it in the US, being that the time right in the middle of the day for me. But
okay. Anyone else?
It could be useful to maybe bounce between sort of having like the community focus where every single person talks, have that like every 2 weeks, and every alternate week perhaps have it where there's like a very specific set of deep dive topics, because you don't know how many people are going to turn up at a community meeting, and
yeah,
you run the risk of bumping the important stuff.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that too.
What about meeting every week instead of every 2 weeks, and then there's a bit more balance?
Well, no, what I was suggesting was like you have 1 week is community focused, then the next week is deep dive, community deep dive.
Yeah, and what about if we also had the meeting every week instead of every 2? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that sounds fine to me, but and maybe what that does is that allows more people to go at just different times, so you have different sets of people. So if you can only make 2 a month or 1 a month, you can just have more flexibility on when you can make it.
Okay, we'll see what I'm going to see what people think on Slack. I'm going to give this over to Richard now.
Okay, so it's quite a rough and ready Ansible script. It's predominantly focused on kind of testing activities. So where I came into this was I wanted somewhere to quickly throw up a clean environment to troubleshoot issues or deploy Derek to when I was developing out Derek. So created it for Swarm to start with, and then I've broadened it out for Kubernetes over the past week. So there's now a new parameter, extra var, the E stands for, and then we just pass it in orchestrator equals K8s or orchestrator equals Swarm. So this bit's going to be a bit boring because it just goes away and does stuff and pushes out to the screen as it's doing it. I'll start Kubernetes off first because that takes longer, and we'll watch the Swarm one go through.
Boring is good in automation, right?
As long as it stays green, we'll be fine. So this is available on GitHub. I put the link in the document that we write to during the meetings. All you need to do is update the your API key in the create droplet vars file, and add in the identity of the SSH key that you want deploying into the box to enable Ansible to connect and configure. Should have shown this first. There was no droplets in there. There should be some creating now. So this is where they were getting stuck earlier. So fingers crossed, that one's going. So one of these should move along a little bit now. There we go. So it's created the infrastructure. Now it's going to configure it. It's a shame the Swarm one's not moving across because that would have nearly finished by now. The Kubernetes branch, if you like, wrong word, deploys the Helm version of things. Yeah.
Can you talk us through any of the roles or a bit about how Ansible works for people that haven't used it?
Yeah, so Ansible it's Python based. It connects over SSH, so there's no agent required to be installed on the other end. There's official and community-driven kind of modules for it. I think the DoPy, which manipulates DigitalOcean API, is a community-driven feature. So part of the script here runs on my machine and talks to the DigitalOcean API. Once the machine's up on the cloud, then we create another host based on the machine that's just been created, and then the rest of the script then runs remotely on the machine that's been created. You can see things flicking through now. Let's have a look at Swarm's catching up. Swarm's getting there. The roles, there's all sorts of different ways of breaking down categories of work or chunks of work. I've created some roles here, and then I'm only calling roles when based on what orchestrator's been passed in. So on the Swarm version, there'll be a load of blue flash through in a minute when it skips install Kubernetes, configure Kubernetes, Helm, and OpenFaaS Kubernetes. It'll just flash through all that and then get straight to configuring OpenFaaS on the Swarm. There we go. So that's skipping all the Kubernetes tasks. And then once this completes, it shouldn't be too far away now. It'll give us the gateway address, the admin user, and the password that's been configured. So this bit here is just waiting for the containers to come down and instantiate. So it doesn't run through to completion and then the user, there we go. So we'll need that, grab that. If we head over there, we should be able to log straight in. Deploy a function. Always go for Figlet. So that's the Swarm version, and then Kubernetes shouldn't be too far behind. Got another wait task there. For some reason, Tiller was taking ages to come up, so I had to set the delay a little bit longer. There we go. It's skipping the Swarm tasks, and then we're waiting for the gateway to come up. We'll get the same output as we do for Swarm.
So what do people think to this? You get Swarm or Kubernetes, all you got to do is type in Ansible playbook.
There we go. So we got a different port. And it's good to go.
Anyone want to try this out?
Don't all shout at once.
See if anyone changed their mind later. I think this is going to be really useful. I even think we might be able to use it for CI, so we can start testing some of the pull requests that come in. If I have shared accounts somewhere and put some credit into it, as long as we tear down the instances afterwards, we could use this to do maybe a full deployment on a couple of nodes, test the Helm chart, that kind of stuff.
I think what you were alluding to earlier as well with Jonas is that where you have got situations where you're perhaps limited with Wi-Fi in workshops, and this would give you a route to an environment, if you like, relatively painlessly.
Yeah, definitely. So if you guys have got any questions, ask on Slack. I think we should probably do something when this is nice and polished, when it's ready to replace.
Would it be worth?
It might be on the actual blog, or it might be on the new one that John's doing. We need to look at what Ivana has now, and then if we've got time, very quickly at the Java.
Could it be worth reaching out to DigitalOcean to see if they want to sponsor the workshops by offering access to accounts for the duration of the workshop? Like if it meant half a day.
Yeah.
You know,
so let's do that through Slack or GitHub. Ivana, can you just show us quickly the auto scaling? So there's something we've been working on, and the team at VMware Dispatch that is using OpenFaaS right now in the testing environment, we're finding that they were getting a lot of test functions using up all the capacity of their GKE cluster, and they wanted it back. So they asked me if we had anything. I showed them a PR that's open about scaling to 0 and back again. And Ivana is just going to show us quickly the scaling up. This is where you've got 0 replicas of your function, but at some point in the past, there was 1 replica. It's now been scaled down. Are you able to share?
Yes, I'll share my screen.
The other component that goes with this is the FaaS idler project. And what that does is it scales functions down after they've been inactive, and that looks at Prometheus to know.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so first I'll show, let me try. I'll show I configured, if you're able to see, I configured scale from 0 to true in the gateway service. And I'll first show you that this is a swarm. This is a running swarm, and I also have running on OpenFaaS on Kubernetes. Here on Swarm, you can see there is 1 replica of this scalar function. So I'm going to scale it down to 0. And we now verified scale to 0. And now I will invoke the function. It takes several seconds for it to scale up again. And yes, it's scaled and it's invoked successfully after it was scaled down to 0. Without this change, when you scale the function to 0, it doesn't get ready again, so it's impossible to invoke it. And I'll do the same on Kubernetes. So I'll use the figlet function. It has now replicas now, so I'll scale it down to 0 again.
And so this is the part that would normally be done by the FaaS idler project. I'm just doing it manually to show you.
Yes, and you can see now the figlet has 0 replicas. So you cannot invoke it from here. It doesn't get ready, and as I said, without the changes, it was impossible to use it after it's scaled. And I'll just invoke it now. It takes several seconds to scale up again.
Is this with the period?
This is with Kubernetes here.
With the period of checking patched, or is this with the default of 10 seconds? The code.
This is with the default. I didn't. Yes, I didn't have time to reuse the optimization for the demo, so this is with the default.
Kubernetes with a current configuration is going to take around 10 seconds because there's some code that checks if the function is live every 10 seconds. And that's why it's going to take a minimum of that. There's in the issue, you can see from the dispatch team, Bernd tweaked the settings and he was able to get it to come up in 2 to 3 seconds, which I think is a lot better. And that's by changing those values and making them run the checks more frequently. And so what we're looking at doing is a pull request so that you can configure how frequently you want to check them. Any questions about scaling? Okay, ask questions on the PR. Maybe you're already familiar with it. We haven't got very long left at all now, but I'll just show you very quickly the Java template again. So this is merged. If I do FaaS template pull, we'll now see that when I do FaaS new list, we're going to get Java 8. This is using Gradle. So if we just put in one of the examples, there's an example in the blog. The first one shows you hello world. The second one shows you third-party dependency, like an external jar. Then we've got parsing JSON and finally fetching a remote website and then parsing the data. What I'll show you is a function called buildInfo. And all this is going to do is going to parse some JSON into a Pojo, which is a Java class. Within the buildInfo folder that I just generated, we'll see the Gradle build. And this is how Java developers can specify what dependencies they need. Maven is another popular tool, which is similar to Gradle. So I've now added JSON, which is Google's JSON implementation, and I can edit the function code. It's always very far down. And then if I just paste in what we have on the blog, we'll be able to save this, and then whatever data we send in on the invoke will get passed into a Java object. So here's Gradle, and that's doing the build. It's going to create some jars for us that then get copied into a multi-stage build, and the multi-stage build means that you have a very small Docker image at the end of it without Gradle inside and everything else. So my fan is spinning around now because it's doing Zoom and Java. Normally this take a couple of seconds. Once you've got your image out the other end, I may already have it in my library. Once you've got it in your library, you can then invoke it and you'll get the output like this. So what Gradle's doing is downloading the jars that it needs by default and then the extra ones. So if you've written Java in a past life, or you know people that do, maybe you write it now, check this out, give us some feedback, tell us what you like, what you want to see in it. Great, well that's the top of the hour now. And so thanks everyone for joining. I'll schedule the next meeting and we'll try doing Eventbrite again, see if we can get everyone to sign up that way rather than necessarily doing all the emails. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.